Hi, I'm Dan Aubuchon. Welcome back to the joy of tennis teaching. The US Open has reached the quarterfinal stage. There have been lots of great matches, and I'm sure there's more to come. Last week we discussed teaching the one-hand and the two-hand backhand, but I definitely did not want to get involved in the whole controversy of what's the better shot. They're two completely independent shots. And like my friend Dave Kensler always says, a two-hander always has to learn a one-hander for emergency situations and in order to hit a better underspin ball. But a one-hander never has to hit a two-hander. I remember talking with Stan Smith many years ago about this very topic, about the one-hander and the two-hander. And Stan envisioned a day when you would have a hybrid. And it's interesting because Brad Gilbert, the commentator, discussed the same sort of thing this week on the US Open commentary, that he anticipates in the future seeing players who will hit two-handed returns, two-handed when they're on defense, one-handed for attack and for underspin, and even one-hander for the big free-flowing passing shots. So that could happen in the future, but let's stick with the present. I'd like to tell you about my preferences for teaching with different types of students and different levels of students. Let's say we're starting with small children. Small children, it's almost always easier for them to hit with two hands. So we go ahead and teach them the two-hander. A lot of small children will do two hands on both sides. But again, we want to expose them to the idea of the one-hander as soon as they're old enough and strong enough and can get the feeling of the grip change. Adult recreational players, I strongly encourage the one-hand backhand. And the reason I do that, which is opposite of a lot of teaching pros nowadays, is that it's physically easier to hit a one-hand backhand if you learn the proper grip. The two-hand backhand requires more athleticism, foot speed, upper body rotation than the one-hand backhand. And let's face it, none of us are getting faster and more flexible as we age. So the idea, I know all the teaching pros that I know when they started teaching full-time switched to a one-hander to save energy. I know many senior players who've told me, yeah, I hit a two-hander when I was young, but I just can't do it anymore. I have to hit the one-hander. So for recreational players, I will almost always try to steer them to one-hander. But that, again, there's exceptions to every rule, and if somebody had played for a long time with a two-hander or hit it particularly well, I had one woman who late into her 60s was so good with her two-hander because her top hand, remember we talked about teaching the top hand, was so good that when she was in trouble, she would reach and hit a one-hand forehand with her top hand, her left hand, her non-dominant hand. So what about for professional players and high-performance players? Well, I'll give the answer that so many of you who went through training with me are used to hearing. It depends. It depends totally on the student. What style do they have? What are their physical capabilities? What is their preference? Oftentimes, I'll have a player try both and say, which one feels better to you? And then that will be the one that we'll do as the primary backhand. I can remember Mats Wilander talking about the great two-handed player from Sweden, talking about he doesn't think he ever would have won the US Open if he hadn't had added a good one-hand underspin to his game. There's lots and lots of examples of players who've done both things. I guess my big message is don't limit yourself as a coach. Learn how to teach both and give your students the option. I don't think, for my friend Phil Lazar, that you can look at the predominance of the two-hand backhand among male players and total predominance among women players practically, as a sign of which one is the better shot. A lot of it is just the numbers game. All these coaches teach the young kids two-handed backhand, and they just grow up doing it. And unless in their early teenage years they decide to make a change like Pete Sampras or Stefan Edberg did, you end up with all of these two-hand players. I don't prefer the one-hander. I like the one-hander. I learned how to hit with it myself. I grew up playing with it. I like watching it. But I think that the players like, Sasha Zverev's two-hand backhand is an amazing shot. Novak Djokovic's two-hand backhand is an amazing shot. But Grigor Dimitri's one-hand backhand is not a weakness. It's a great shot. And the stats, he's into the final 8, the last one of the one-handers left in the tournament, and he's doing great, and I'm rooting for him. So go out there, be joyful, and teach both the one-hand and the two-hand backhand.